Avast, ye scurvy dogs! It's Stefan here to play some Pathfinder Adventure Card Game, Skull and Shackles. This is a physical card game. I have the box here, and I've gotten it set up in a tabletop simulator by scanning all the base set cards and then cutting those out individually and then pasting them back into the files that are needed to be opened up in the tabletop simulator. It took a long time to do that. And yeah, some of the cards are going to be a little bit crooked. I didn't use a template to put the cards in the scanner. I just did as good as I could. And when you put the lid down, sometimes they get disrupted a bit, but that's okay. I have a bit of a history with this game. When Paizo first introduced the game, or it was going to be shown at Gen Con, and months before that they had posted to their site, and I think their Twitter feed as well, looking for volunteers to teach the game. And I was just getting back into the Pathfinder role-playing game at that point, and decided, what the heck, I would put my name in. I didn't really think it would go anywhere, but they accepted me, and I ended up going to Gen Con and teaching the game for, I think, all 4 days of Gen Con. It was, like an 8-hour day on the trade floor, and we had just a swarm of people coming into that booth. It was never a dull moment. Played the same very small version of the game over and over many times, but that was how we introduced people to the game. And you could buy the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game there. I didn't, because I rode my motorcycle to Gen Con. I didn't have any room to be taking a box this size. It's a pretty big box, as you can see. But what's really nice about it is the way that they've broken up the insert. Everything has its own spot, and you can easily pull things out, and it's tall enough so that if you want to carry it with you, the cards don't fall out and get mixed together. So it's very nice presentation. They did a really good job on it. And this Skull and Shackles is the second version. The first was Rise of the Runelords. So that's what we're gonna play this today. I'm just gonna be playing solo, and I'm going to play 2 characters. I have a game of the Rise of the Runelords going with some friends. We meet every other week and play one scenario, and we've just gotten through the 4th adventure, so we're starting the 5th adventure, which means we've also chosen our customizations, our specializations, and that's been a really good time. And we have had some losses. I mean, we haven't won every scenario. We've had to replay some, and the game does get tough at some points, and I think we'll see that come into play here as well. You'll notice once we get to the actual game that I have not selected any healer. I just have a ranged character and a melee character. So we'll see how that goes. I mean, we'll be able to pick up healing potions and things, but it may get to the point where I need to add a 3rd character or something to make it possible to continue. So since I wanted to put this game all together in Tabletop Simulator and be able to record it and then edit and then post to YouTube, I also needed a way to roll dice, and I didn't really like the dice rolling that they have in Tabletop Simulator. And for one thing, everything in Tabletop Simulator is really small and you have to zoom in on it. So what I'm going to do is I'm using a dice roller on my iPad that's hooked in here, and we'll see that when I switch over to needing to roll dice. And yeah, well, I mean, I think that's pretty much what we need to cover for the start. I'll explain how you play the game as I play the game. But the first thing that you have to do with a Pathfinder Adventure Card Game is to set up the scenario. And so I haven't done that yet. I'm going to do that this first video as just part of the video and see if people like it. If people would rather not see that and have it preset, I can do that. That's what I do when I play with my friends in the Rise of the Runelords campaign. I preset it, take it there so we don't spend that time setting up, and we just put it out on the table to play, and we can get that done in an hour, which is really nice because that's about all the time I have to visit with them usually. So let's switch over to the gameplay tab here, and I'm going to open up Tabletop Simulator. So one of the things that you can do here is you can have all your decks put together, which is really cool. You can actually name them too. And so there's tons and tons of cards involved in the Pathfinder Adventure Card Game. I think the base set has about 500 cards. Then you generally will add the character add-on deck, which is another 110 cards, and then each adventure, which it's broken into 6 separate adventures. Each adventure is another 110 cards, and then there's some promo cards. So really, a lot of cards, and it took a long time, as you can imagine, to scan all those. And so what I have here in the template is I've got the character cards for the 2 characters I'm going to be playing, Jarell and Lyrian, and they're both half-elf females. One's a gunslinger, one's a swashbuckler. And you see they have their stats and they have powers, and these are sort of very similar to a traditional role-playing game. I mean, this entire design of this game came out of a role-playing game, just the Pathfinder RPG. So you've got strength and dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, and underneath those you'll see that some of them have some specializations. For example, acrobatics is their dexterity +1, or ranged is dexterity +3. And the dice that are involved here are the base dice that you use for checks against that skill. And you can see that as the game progresses, there's these additional checkboxes that you can modify your character to make it the way that you want it to be. So the skill sets for both of these characters are very dex-based, so they'll probably be increasing their dex first. These pluses are always great because that's just a solid addition to your roll. Maybe after the first adventure I would get a skill feat, and I would be able to make that a +2 from then on. And this +1 also affects dexterity, so if she's just doing a regular non-combat dexterity check, then she'd get that plus on that d10. And then down at the bottom you've got hand size, which determines how many cards you have out in your hand. It also, because of the way the game works, determines how much damage you can take in any given turn. So if you take damage, you discard cards from your hand until you're out of cards, or you've discarded enough to cover the damage. And so if you have 6 or 7 cards in your hand, it's possible for you to take 6 or 7 damage. If you only have 4 cards in your hand, like Lyrian starts with, she doesn't have as many choices, but she also can't take as much damage. So it's an interesting compromise when you're choosing to increase your hand size or not. And you'll notice that Jarell starts with 5 hand size, but she can go up to 6 or 7. Lyrian starts with 4, she can only go to 5. So each character is a little bit different in that regard. Now, proficient with comes into play when there are various effects on armors and weapons. They're both proficient with light armors, they're both proficient with weapons. If one of them were to pick up a heavy armor, for example, they wouldn't be proficient with it, so there might be limits to what they can really do with that. And then down in the bottom, you have the actual individual powers of these 2 characters, and we'll get into that in a bit. Every character also has, and we're going to zoom in here, a token card, and this gives you something that you can place on the board to track your character. And if we can flip it over, and we'll see that this is the big version. That this is where we would put this in front of a location to indicate that we are at the location. This gives us a little bit of background, so we'll read those in a second. And then you've got all the cards over here. This is laid out just the way the box would be. And what we need to do first, actually, is find our adventure. Oops, and I've taken the whole thing. I haven't really used this to play, so I'll just see. Alright, this is the adventure. And this is the adventure that comes in the base box. You don't have to buy this separately, whereas all the other adventures are add-ons to the box. So Plunder and Peril. The Shackles includes hundreds of islands spinning off from the western coast of Garond, and they're the perfect hunting grounds for the inner sea region's most notorious pirates. To join their ranks, you'll have to learn how to survive, not just aboard a ship, but among the treacherous scalawags and vicious sea monsters who call these broken isles home. You'll face brutal ship-to-ship battles, engagements with raiders from beneath the waves, and treacherous trips ashore. The life of a pirate is not for the weak. Okay, so that's the backstory. We flip the card over, And this is what defines this adventure. So we'll see that it says complete these scenarios in order. Island hopping is going to be the first scenario that we'll go through, then goes to Rum Punch, Dangerous Water, Sunken Treasure, and the Black Flag. If you complete all those scenarios, then you get the reward that is listed there, and each character gains a skill feat. So if we go back to the character cards, we would be able to put a check mark in one of these to improve one of our skills. Okay, so it said island hopping. I think it's probably the top one, but let's see. Yep. Okay, let's flip that. And we're going to put these up here together. Island hopping. Okay, so every scenario has a villain and henchman, and that's going to determine what your goal in the scenario is. Your goal is pretty much always to defeat the villain, and the henchmen are the people you can encounter on the way that allow you to close down locations. And you'll see the reward from here is each character gains a random item from the box, which, you know, is interesting. You are limited to the number of cards that you can have in your deck. They both start with 15 cards. I don't actually have the cards out here that show what the card counts are for these two, but even though you would add an item card, you wouldn't necessarily want to keep it, and you'd have to replace an existing item card to keep it. But we'll get to that once that comes into effect. So let's take a look at the back. Island hopping. There's booty ahead, if you're bold enough to seize it. A merchantman's vessel is ready for the taking, but an enemy ship prowls nearby. Its captain is an Adaro barbarian, a tyrant, who would just as soon feed you to the sharks. Maybe you should make him their new chum. And you'll see here that it's saying what the locations are that you're going to use. And so if you're just playing one person, or what they really mean here is one character, then you would only have 3 locations. We're going to have 4 locations, because we have 2 characters. And it goes on up to 6 characters. You do have to have the character out on deck to play with 6 people. I play 3 with my friends, which is really good. We always have 5 locations. It seems like it works out really well. We've got a ranged person, a melee person, and a healer that can do some melee. So it's a good combo. But anyway, this says Shark Island, Floating Shipyard, and Lonely Island, and Tempest Cay are the locations that we need to set up this scenario. So we're going to go and find those here, and we're going to search. Alright, so we've got the 4 locations that we're going to be using. And you do have to do this in every setup game. So we're going to look at these here. Shark Island. Numerous deadly breeds of marauders hunt the Shackles. Bull sharks, goblin sharks, jigsaw sharks, fierce hammerheads, anti-helicoprians, and worse. As if such deadly hunters weren't enough of a reason to never leave dry land, these predators sometimes collect around specific isles, whether drawn there by savage instinct or by the will of the vicious sea devil shepherds. Now we've got Tempest Cay. A storm-calling master of the gales rules this northern Shackles Island. Amid its jungles and sea caves sprawls the city of Drenchport, one of the region's larger and more dangerous ports. If the island's strange weather, cruel and carnivorous apes weren't dangerous enough, the isle is also swept as the seat of an eerie religion, calling itself the Cult of the Eye. Lonely Island. A single regal crab and his coconut bride claim dominion over every sprawling square foot of this remote island. Woe to the uninvited who step barefoot upon its isolated paradise. And finally, Floating Shipyard. Between ocean-bound battles and encounters with sea monsters, pirates are notoriously rough on their ships. Many vessels seem to spend as much time being repaired as they do at sea. Alright, so we're going to flip all these over. And on the front side of the card, it is going to provide us with a deck list. And the deck list is what determines the cards that make up this location. And so it's going to be different for each, but they all basically have the same count. Then you also see there's at this location, which describes things that you can do or that happen at that location. So if we're at the floating shipyard, we can add 3 to our checks to repair ships. And then it's got they all have a closing, so it's a check that you need to succeed at to close, and then there's often when permanently closed effect that happens. And the first thing is too that we need to get the villain out, Addo Barbarian. And he's one of the guys in here, so let's see if sort works a little bit better for this one. There. Alright, there's a villain. And we can stop search on that. And then we need an enemy ship and hammerhead shark. Alright, there's a hammerhead shark. So we're going to need 1, 2, and somehow we accidentally have a location card got in there. And then enemy ship. Was that the next one? Oh yeah. Enemy ship. Right. So basically we're going to have one villain, and then we're going to have a henchman for each location. So that's 4 cards. We'll flip this deck over, and whoops, we're going to pick it up and shuffle it. And we're going to deal 1 to each location. So we don't know what they are. And these location decks are going to be shuffled, so yeah, they're starting on the bottom, but they won't necessarily be on the bottom. Alright, there's that. And now we're going to do monsters. So this deck needs 2 monsters. We're just going to take 2 monsters off and put them right in there. Oh, we should shuffle that. Well, we have no idea what's in there right now, but let's just shuffle it for fun. Okay, then we'll go over here. This needs 0 monsters. This needs 5 monsters. Okay. I think we can actually deal a certain number. Well, let's just do it manually because I'm not sure. Alright, that brings this deck up to... Oh no, wait, that's an extra. We don't need that one. So we're at 6 cards in that deck now. And then this needs 2 monsters. And now we move on to barriers. So there's 2 barriers here. Let's again shuffle these. So 1 and 2. And this needs 3 barriers. 1, 2, and 3. And 0 barriers here, and 2 barriers here. Alright, now the barriers and the monsters are what they call banes. Those are things that have a negative effect. Anytime you have to fight a monster or encounter a barrier, they're generally negative. Then everything else is a boon, which means that it has a positive effect for your character, or potentially can anyway, because maybe you'll find something that's not useful to you, but it potentially is useful. So this doesn't have any weapons. This has 2 weapons. I keep forgetting to shuffle the decks. No, only want 1. No. That's here, right? 2 weapons, yeah. This has 1 weapon. And then it has 0 weapons. So we're going to move on to spells. And how many spells did it have? 2. So there's 1, 2. So there's 1 spell. This has 0 spells, and this has 2 spells. Okay, and then we move on to armor. So 1 armor here in this one. And armor is, I think, one of the smallest decks in the box. So there's just not a lot of armor to go around. And 1 armor on this. 2 armor on here, so we've got a chance to pick up some armor. Both of these characters already have armor as well, so they may not end up picking up something that they would want or even could use. Like I said, they were both proficient with light armor, so if we were to pick up a heavy armor, it wouldn't necessarily be of any use. 0 items, 1 item. So shuffle the items. Zero items. And 0 items. Well, only 1 item to get out of this, these 4 locations, so that's going to be tough. Allies. So these are people that can help you. One of the main things that allies do is let you explore more than once. You can discard them to explore your location again. And the reason that is important is because there is a timer in this game, and we'll get into the timer in just a bit. Boy, not too many allies. Okay, 2 allies here. And then the last card are blessings. And blessings are really good because they let you add additional die to your checks. So you have a base check die, and then the blessing lets you add another of those. And your fellow characters can play blessings on you as well. So it's very interesting the way the game works. I like it a lot. Okay, so there's our locations all set. So they should have 10 cards each, and they do. Oops. I'm gonna pause to pick up the whole deck. We'll shuffle that. Shuffle this one. Shuffle again. Okay, so one of the things that can happen, and you really don't want it to, is you could end up encountering the villain early on. And that's a problem because he then will come back, because you won't have everything locked down to prevent him from doing so. Alright, now both characters have decks as well. So we're going to shuffle those. And draw out, let's see, we don't want to deal, actually. Deal in this puts it down in a place in your own area, which we don't want to do that because we won't be able to see that. So we're just going to draw cards out. This is a cooperative game, so we always play face up. So she only gets 4 cards. And I should move these a little bit away because she's going to need a discard deck as well. Alright, so we're going to flip these over. And one of the things that you need to do is make sure that you have at least 1 card of your preferred card type. And Lyrion's preferred card type is a weapon, and I don't see that she has a weapon here. She's got she's got 2 allies and a Blessing of the Gods. So what we do in that case is we're going to take these out. Oh boy, flip them over apparently because that's fun. We're going to shuffle this again, and we're going to draw 4 more to see if she gets a weapon this time. And she will, most likely, because the majority of her cards are weapons. So, yes, there's a weapon, there's a weapon, there's a weapon, maybe, I don't know what that is. Nope, it's an item. And an ally. So she's got 2 weapons. Neither of them are ranged, unfortunately, but that's okay. So we're going to flip these over. We'll put them back, if I can grab them all. And then shuffle this. Alright, so she has her 4 cards. She has a card of her preferred type, so she is all set. And then Lyrion's deck, Jarell's deck, she starts with a hand size of 5, so we'll pile out 5 cards here. And I'm not quite used to having to follow where the shadow goes to find out where the card's going to drop, especially with this particular angle, because you can't even really see the shadow. Not that it has to be perfect, obviously. Okay, so there's a Blessing of the Gods, there's a weapon, there's an ally, and 2 Blessings of the Gods for her, so that's good. But she's got the allies, which is her preferred card type, so she is all set with her initial hand. Alright, so we're going to flip these tokens over. And one of the things that's a strategy in the game is figuring out what you should do as far as going to starting locations, and whether should you be both at the same location or should you split up. That's one of the challenges, and so to find out, we sort of need to look at the locations. This location is obviously good for repairing the ship, and we still need to pull the ship card out. I haven't done that yet. Then we've got the Lonely Island. If you are the only character at this location, add 1d4 to checks attempted at this location. So if you're there alone, you actually have a better chance at making your checks. When closing, you have to banish an ally. Now, banish means you put it back into the box, so it leaves your deck, it's gone. And then once you finish the scenario, you have to reset your hand, and you can do that by pulling basic cards out of the deck, out of the box, and put them back in your deck. At the start of your turn, summon and encounter the henchman Hammerhead Shark. So every turn that you're here, you have to encounter a Hammerhead Shark. So let's get the Hammerhead Shark out, because we're going to need one. Let's see if we can tell. There's a Hammerhead Shark. So we're going to just need that. I'm just going to put it here. It's going to be part of this deck. So that's going to be a thing. And what is this guy? He's a monster, and his check to defeat is 9, as you can see over on the right hand side. May not be evaded, so sometimes you have cards or abilities that allow you to evade encounters. The difficulty of defeat is increased by the adventure deck number of the current scenario, if any. In this case, we're playing the base, so there isn't one. If defeated, you may immediately attempt to close the location, except that doesn't affect this one, because this is summoned, so you don't get to use that effect if it's summoned. So you'd have to do a combat 9 check every time you start your turn here. And then the last one, if your ship is dealt structural damage, increase the damage by 1. Okay, so it's a bad, probably has like reefs or something. That's what they're trying to get at. Now we should also look at the closing checks. So when closing, succeed at an intelligence or knowledge 7 check. Oh boy, that's going to be tough, because Lyrion has an intelligence of D6 and Jarell has a D4. So neither one of them are very well suited to that. Summon and defeat a henchman Hammerhead Shark. Well, it's all about Hammerhead Sharks at that one, so it's just straight up combat. Banish an ally, which we already saw, and succeed at intelligence or craft 8. And neither of them have craft, and they both have low intelligence, so it could be a challenge to close some of these locations. But we'll deal with that when we get there. Alright, so now I do need to bring out the ship, and I'm going to have to look at the rules, because this is one of the new aspects of this game compared to Rise of the Rune Lords. So we need to find the Merchant Man. We're going to need to use the zoom button. Dominator, Wormwood, Merchant Man. Alright, now I think this card has a little bit of backstory too. The plucky merchant crew considers a ship valuable when its hold is laden with precious goods. So do the pirates in port peril. That's one of the few ideas that unites the denizens of the Shackles. Anyway, we've got the plunder card set up. So that's good. I don't think there's, other than the blessings deck, I don't think there's much more for us to do. Draw starting hands. Yet. And good. Okay. Now just to find out, what is the repair? When commanding the ship, if you fail to defeat a Bane that has a pirate trait barrier card. Okay, that doesn't seem to say. Oh, the check to repair is craft 6. Well, that's going to be tough because nobody has craft to start with. And that's just the way it goes. Okay, so we're just about ready to start playing. And we're going to need to make a blessings deck. Let's shuffle these. And we need 30 cards. All I want you to do is cut the deck. So I guess it's 28 blessings on top. I don't know how to rotate these now. Anyway, we need 30 blessings, and now we have them. So that's going to be the blessings deck. How do we rotate this back? I guess it was done this way because they really expect you to be placing it back in there, but we're trying to shortcut this here. Anyway, we'll deal with that when we need blessings cards.